If we turn our backs and spit in his face, is God still gonna bless the USA?
In the old Soviet Union, school children were issued history textbooks that changed year to year. Photographs were quietly edited, names disappeared, events were shortened or re-explained, nothing dramatic, just minor omissions. Most students never noticed. They assumed what they were given was complete. But years later, when the archives were opened, historians discovered that the story hadn't been rewritten with lies alone. It had been rewritten with erasers. What people believed wasn't shaped by what was said, but by what was left out. That same method of control by omission is not unique to totalitarian regimes. It's happening in America today. Ask a public school young person about the American War of Independence or the War between the States or World War II and see what they were taught in the government indoctrination centers. Greetings, Patriots. I'm Perry Greene. Welcome to God in America, where we believe a free person cannot think clearly or repent honestly if their history is selectively taught. Partial truth produces distorted judgment. Let me tell you a story most Americans have never heard. A man of African descent named Anthony Johnson lived in an early American colony. He was once enslaved, but earned his freedom and purchased land. And yes, he owned white indentured servants and later held a black servant in lifetime servitude through the courts. That fact alone disrupts the simplified story that many of us were taught. I'm not sharing this to excuse slavery. I'm sharing it to expose how history has been flattened to shape modern thinking. Early slavery existed across cultures, nations, and peoples. When education removes that context, it replaces history with ideology and makes it race-based when it was not originally. Anthony Johnson was not an isolated case. There were other free black landowners in colonial America, some of whom held servants or slaves. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." The book of Proverbs warns us, "He who speaks truth gives honest evidence, but a false witness utters deceit." Withholding the facts is still bearing false witness. Real history is uncomfortable and inconvenient to political narratives, but it is also clarifying. Here's another truth rarely emphasized. By the late colonial era, most Americans opposed slavery in principle, especially in the northern colonies. Several states moved toward abolition early. Churches debated it openly. Many founders called it a moral wrong, including Thomas Jefferson. Here are a few quotes from our maligned forefathers regarding the enslavement issue. John Adams said, "Negro slavery is an evil of colossal magnitude." Benjamin Franklin said, "Slavery is an atrocious debasement of human nature." John Jay wrote, "Till America comes into this measure," which he's referring to abolition, "her prayers to heaven for liberty will be impious." Gouverneur Morris wrote, "Slavery is a nefarious institution. It was the curse of heaven on the states where it prevailed." That would include white enslavements as well as black. Slavery did not endure because Americans celebrated it, but because dismantling it was slow, contested, and costly. Slavery was the backbone of the southern states' economy. Without those colonies, independence would have been impossible. The Declaration signers were forced to compromise on the issue. No American embodied that long moral struggle more clearly than John Quincy Adams. After leaving the presidency, he spent nearly 2 decades in Congress fighting slavery, challenging the gag rule on the subject, defending enslaved Africans, and calling slavery a violation of God's moral law. Adams stated, "Slavery is a sin before God and a shame to man." He did not believe America was beyond redemption, but he thought it was accountable. Some biblical scholars believe that more than 600,000 American lives were lost in the war between the states and that the South was defeated because of the slavery issue. 600,000, I'm told, was the approximate number of enslaved people in the United States. It makes us wonder how God will deal with nations that openly and quote unquote legally murder children through abortions. So why are these truths minimized? because complexity creates independent thinkers, and independent thinkers are hard to control. Isaiah warned, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." That warning applies to education as much as politics. We demand honest history. We teach our children how to think, not just how to feel. We tell the whole story with humility, courage, and faith. Micah 6, verse 8 tells us what the Lord requires, and that is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. You cannot do that if you're lied to or you refuse to learn. Thanks for being with us today. Until next time, let's keep the light of full disclosure burning.